I wanna do it like this, do it like that. And once I get it, ain't no turning back. Woo! What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Junior's World of Soul. I am back with a new video representing R&B the right way. I know y'all like, yo, JR, it's Tuesday. It's time for current R&B bangers. No, people. No. It's been some foolery going on, and I had to address it now. If y'all watch current R&B bangers, last week, I kind of addressed it a little bit, and it was all about the Jacquees situation and how he called himself the King of R&B of this generation. And I said what I had to say, and I thought it was completely over. I was like, okay, it's done. You know what I mean? I don't got to address this no more. Even though people was putting out foolery and all the foolishness, I was like, I'm not addressing this no more. So then, about a day, 2 days ago, Mr. Jacquees take this even further. So, you know, TMZ was following Keith Sweat, and they was asking him about it. You know what I'm saying? And what Jacquees did was so disrespectful. Like, how you just gonna step up on the OG like that and say, well, no, I'm the king of this, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, do you know who you talking to? You talking to Keith Sweat. Like, are you kidding me? Like, respect your elders, little man. Like, if you watch that video, you know you gotta give Keith Sweat the utmost respect, because I'm telling you, he could have knocked Jacquees in the mouth so bad, like if he was his father, or yanked him like, dude, don't you ever disrespect me like that. But he just waved like that and took the high road, and then they did the interview with Tank and Tigger. And now Keith Sweat basically had to explain, and Jacquees was like, oh, you know what I'm saying, I apologize. And he was like, that's right, young man, you need to apologize. Show respect. And I was just like, yo, it just goes to show how much this generation really don't respect our legends like that. Especially if they don't know them. You know what I mean? And they don't try to go back and do their history on them. And it's very disheartening, because for Jacquees to really step to Keith Sweat like that was really, really ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? It's like, dude, respect your elders. That's when it comes to. You know what I'm saying? And he did not do it, and then it bothered me. And I kept watching that video, and I was like, yo, why couldn't Keith Sweat at that time be like 19? Because he could have slapped the shit out of him. Like, you know what I'm saying? Maybe if he would have slapped the shit out of Jacquees, maybe he could have got some better vocals than them struggles that he be giving us. You know what I'm saying? Like, for real. But I was like, I respect Keith Sweat because he took the high road. You know what I'm saying? And he was like, I'm going to teach this young brother, and I'm going to let him know. You know what I'm saying? Because I love how he said when Tank and Tigger was interviewing, he was like, I sold 30 million, so I don't got to say nothing. He just stopped right then and there, because if you're going to call yourself the king of R&B, Jacquees, at least have a hit. At least sell some records. You ain't selling nothing. You're doing nothing but remakes, and they getting taken offline. Like, dude, know your place. So, with all that, then also on Twitter, it was bothering me because, you know, Ebro, he is like a troll within itself. But when he came out and said what he said, you know what I'm saying? Because everybody seems to get lost in what Jacquees said. Jacquees said, I am the king of my generation. That's what he said. But people taking that as the king of R&B. So everybody is just like, this is the king and that's it. And then the people that they're putting, I'm like, y'all got other people that y'all just forgetting about. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a video so I don't even have to address this online anymore. You can go back and watch the video and see what I said. So what I decided to do with this video is say, listen, I'm going to talk about who the king of R&B of each decade was, but then I'm also break some stuff down on who came in and who had the hits and all this kind of stuff so people can really understand. Because at the end of the day, everybody is kings, especially when it comes to R&B, man. Especially what we need right now. You know what I'm saying? And I love what Bobby Valentino also said. You know what I'm saying? Even though he was in the hotel with, you know what I'm saying? But he was like, yo, instead, won't we just all do a tour? Let the egos go out the window. Let all this, like R&B needs as much as we need right now. So a tour, I think that would have been dope. I think that would have been hot. But you know, that ain't never gonna happen because you got too many egos. It's too many egos, and it's just sad, especially the way R&B is going. You know what I mean? But like I said in this video, I'm just gonna do who I feel is like the kings of each decade. But I'm also gonna shout out the other people that was part of it and why I'm giving the person the king. And let me break that down before I go in so then people don't act all crazy and be crazy up in the comments. My criteria of who was the king of that decade and when it comes to R&B as the man is you had the hits, you had the impact, you had, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, you had the crossovers, but you was representing R&B music. Period. R&B melodies, R&B, you know, sounds, different things like that. You wasn't doing, okay, pop and not pop because R&B really started to become pop, but you putting other genres in there like rock and all this, but they're gonna make that an R&B song and they're gonna give you #1 on the R&B charts just because of who you are. It's not because if it's an R&B record, you know what I'm saying? Like, for instance, how can they give a song like Beat It, how is that an R&B record? Come on, people. He only got it because of he's Michael Jackson. You see what I'm saying? So for me, that's my criteria when you're just completely R&B, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. So let's get this started. Let's take a little sip a little bit. I had to come in with Key Sweat because I had to represent, but I'm gonna be representing for Key Sweat in it when we get to the 80s. So let's start this. So you know, before really R&B became really popular, it was all about blues and jazz. Jazz was it for us. You know what I'm saying? It was really, really it for us. But when it really started to become R&B as popular music, it really started in the 50s. You know what I'm saying? And in the 50s, you know, before then, the guys that really represented, you know, black R&B music or black music, period, was Nat King Cole. It was Sammy Davis Jr. These were the guys that was representing. These were the guys that we could look at as our guys for black music. But then in the 50s, it started to change because you had somebody named Ray Charles that came in and kind of changed the sound. It wasn't all about because if you watch the movie, he was adding gospel to his. And a lot of people couldn't accept that. You know what I mean? But a new sound was changing. You know what I'm saying? It was a whole new sound. So it was Ray Charles and then Little Richard started coming in. But Little Richard was actually putting rock and all that into it. But when it was strictly R&B, it was Ray Charles. You got to give it to him. You know what I mean? But you have Ray Charles. That's who I'm giving it to as far as who's the king of that decade. I'm giving it to Ray Charles. But then from 1950 to 1956, you look down the line, Ray Charles he's like in the R&B category, it's just ridiculous. He's just top 5 every song he came out with. But then in 56, 57, 58, you had James Brown coming in, you had Sam Cooke come in, you had Jackie Wilson. They were all new guys. It wasn't all about what Jackie Wilson was doing. They were the guys. You know what I'm saying? They were the it guys. But they didn't come in saying, we're going to be the new kings of this new sound, and we're going to be the kings of our generation. No, they didn't say that. They just came in and did what they had to do. You know what I'm saying? So by that time, even though from the whole decade, when you want to say who was the top dog when it came to R&B in that decade, you got to give it to Ray. Just look at the hits that he did. You know what I'm saying? Just look at the complete hits. You didn't have didn't have Sam Cooke and Jackie Wilson and James Brown didn't come into the end of the 50s. So you can't give them the complete decades. You know what I'm saying? So once they came in 57, it was like, oh, a whole new sound is coming in. You know what I'm saying? It's all about the ballads. You know what I'm saying? These were it. It wasn't about, tell me what I say. Like, it wasn't about, it was these guys coming in. It was more about the entertainment. You know what I'm saying? Because Ray Charles was sitting at the piano. Yeah, it's entertainment, but now we want to see you. You want to move. You want to dance, and that's what Jackie Wilson, James Brown, and Sam Cooke. Even though Sam was not the best dancer, but he performed. You know what I'm saying? It was something different. You know what I mean? So then now we're going into the 60s. So now by this time you have, Ray Charles was the king of this in the 50s, but at the end you got Sam, you got, Jackie Wilson, you got James Brown. This is all going into the 60s now. So now we're into the 60s. Now Ray Charles is still doing his thing, but you got really Sam Cooke and Jackie Wilson was those guys. But then now you got a whole new sound that's coming out of Detroit. And this is Berry Gordy with Motown. So now R&B is now changing again. So now you got people like Smokey that's coming in with the Miracles, and then you have this guy that comes in, his name is Marvin Gaye, and he does Stubborn Kind of Fellow in 1962. And things just change. It's a whole new sound now. You know what I'm saying? So from 1962 to 1969, if you look on the R&B charts and you also look on the pop charts, Marvin Gaye was definitely there. There was nobody that was like literally the impact that he had on those charts could not mess with Marvin in the 60s. So if you want to talk about who was the king of the 60s, in my opinion, it had to be Marvin. Just look at what Marvin was doing. He had his own hits. Then after that, he got with Mary Wells and he was creating hits with her. Then he got with Tammy Terrell. Mind you, he was still doing his own hits on the side anyway. So who was really messing with him? You know what I'm saying? But then you also had Benny King with Stand By Me come in. You also had Otis Redding that was coming in. You know what I'm saying? But Otis Redding didn't really get his first hit until 1964 when Pain in My Heart. So you can't really give him the entire decade. But these guys were still doing their thing. They still had hits. They still was rocking. But they were not messing with Marvin, in my opinion, when it comes to the 60s. He was that guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was nothing. You know what I'm saying? So now, because between 57 and 64, Sam Cooke was doing his thing. But he passed. So you couldn't give him the 50s, but you couldn't give him the 60s. But from 57 to 64, he had a damn good run. So you cannot say he's not a king. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, but if you want to talk about decades, I can't give Sam Cooke a whole decade. He's a favorite of mine. You know what I'm saying? He is a favorite of mine. But you can't do that. You know what I'm saying? So now, now we're into the late 60s, 68, where music is really starting to change. It's now about to be, it's very, how can I say it? It's very, social, and it's about really what's going on in our communities and things like that. So then now you got also, because now we ain't even done with the 60s. You got, like I said, you had Marvin, you had Otis, you had Curtis Mayfield, you had, because he was with the Impressions, but you see that he's about to go solo. You know what I'm saying? So now, and little Stevie Wonder. Now, as much as Stevie came out with Fingertips in 1963, yes, it was huge, but he was not neck and neck with Marvin because it took him a couple of times, because actually, if you want to have a fact, Barry actually wanted to drop Stevie because after a while, Stevie wasn't pulling out any hits. So Barry was like, I'm not making no money off him, but the executive was like, we need to keep him. So he kept them. So don't get me wrong, Stevie was getting his hits in the 60s, which I really enjoyed, like Hey Lover and I Used to Love Her, and Everything Is Alright, Uptight, and Blowing in the Wind, and all those type of songs. Like, they were hits, but they wasn't like consistent like Marvin's. Marvin's was completely consistent. But now, like I said, in 68, things are starting to change. Music is starting to change. It's starting to be more about what was going on in our community as R&B. But you still got all these guys in there. So now we going into the 70s. Now you got Marvin that's still reigning. You got Stevie that's starting to really come into his own. You know what I'm saying? And really, really come into his own. And then now you got, you know what I'm saying? Now it was really focused on a lot of groups in the 70s, male groups. But you still had, now, like I said, Curtis Mayfield went solo. Then you also had Barry White come in. And then you had, so many people coming in. But if you want to talk about the 70s, in my opinion, I felt like Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder was neck and neck. But I felt like Stevie was coming so much into his own, and that was his classic period, and it was really, really, really like an impact. This dude was winning Album of the Year for freaking R&B albums. He won in 73, 74 for Individuals. He won for 75 for First Finale. He won in 77 for Songs in the Key of Life. These are like R&B albums, but he's getting Album of the Year. Those are impacts. Now, don't get me wrong. Marvin had What's Going On. He had Let's Get It On, all this kind of stuff. But then you also had Isaac Hayes that was coming in, who won an Oscar for Shaft. You had, Barry White coming in. And it was just, all these guys were definitely doing their thing. But if you want to talk about, like I said, what my criteria was, I have to give it to Stevie. I have to. I got to give it to Stevie. Stevie was that guy. But Marvin was still like neck and neck with him. But it was like kind of like 76, 77, Marvin it started going down for him. You know what I'm saying? Because it was like, once he came with Hear My Dear in 78, everybody really didn't rock with the album. It was kind of a commercial failure. But Stevie was still doing his things on the Songs of Key of Life. That album lasted him. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I definitely give it to Stevie. But then now we're at the end of the 70s. You got, you got Barry White. You got Teddy Pendergrass, who's about to go solo, who's gone solo. You got, like I said, you got Isaac Hayes. You got Curtis Mayfield. You got, who else is in the 70s? Now you got these new guys. You got, he's not new, but then now you got Michael. He done went solo. Now really, really went solo. You know what I'm saying? Because Michael had solo albums back in 72 when he was with Motown and all that. But now it's his own thing. He going solo. Then you got this new guy coming in named Prince. You got Rick James coming in. It's a whole new sound because now it's more funky now. R&B is completely changing. It's not the same as it was from 1970 to 75. Now it's changing because now you got disco. Now it's being a little bit more funky, and it's a whole new style. So it was like, what was hot in 70 ain't gonna be hot in 76. It's just it just is what it is. So now you got all these guys that's coming in. That don't make them not being kings. Because let me tell you something. Teddy Pendergrass was doing his thing. Barry White was doing his thing. Hell, Lou Rawls was doing his thing. Like I said, Curtis Mayfield was in there. But then you had some new guys coming in. Like I said, Prince and Rick James and Michael was going solo. So it was a whole new thing going into the 80s. The 80s, a whole new sound was coming in. Now you had Kashif, who I feel like is so not talked about when it comes to the 80s, when it comes to the change. You know what I'm saying? It was a whole new change. So now in the 80s, now you got Rick James, who is like that dude. You know what I'm saying? Once he came with street songs. Then you got Prince. Now you got this new guy coming in who was a background singer for damn near everybody. We talking about Luther. Luther comes in. You know what I'm saying? It's a whole new sound for R&B, like I said, Kashif, and you got all these different, things coming in. So now it's like who I feel like is the king of the 80s. In my opinion, and we're talking about strictly R&B, I gotta give it to Luther Vandross. Because he was doing R&B melodies, he was doing R&B songs, it was just R&B. Now don't get me wrong, you had Michael that was running it, you know what I'm saying? But Michael was catering to more of the pop world. You had Prince with Purple Rain had rock, had alternative, had all this different stuff in it, funk, all that. but it wasn't strictly R&B. But they were gonna get the R&B classified because they were black. Then you had, of course, Lionel Richie. You know what I'm saying? Lionel Richie. He done went solo from the Commodores. Of course, he's selling to the pop world, but at the end of the day, he is getting R&B charted because him being black. But you got Luther, who was really just strictly R&B from 81 to 89. Luther was strictly R&B. Now, don't get me wrong. He chased his little pop joints like Give Me a Reason and Stop to Love and those kind of joints. But Luther was strictly R&B. You couldn't help it. That's just what he was. His melodies, the way he sung, it was strictly R&B. So you cannot tell me from 81 to 89, Luther was not running the R&B charts. But like I said, now in 85, you got a whole new sound coming in thanks to Teddy Riley. Got a whole new sound coming in. So now you got new guys that's coming in now. You got, you also, you know what I'm saying, you got, like I said, you got a whole new set. So you got Freddie Jackson coming in. You got, you know what I'm saying, mind you, all those guys that I was just talking about, you know, that came in the 80s was still doing anything. Like I said, the Prince and the Michaels and the Teddy P. Because Teddy P, from 77 to 82, this dude was doing his thing. The Bedroom, Al Green. I forgot about Al Green in the 70s. I forgot about Eddie Kendricks in the 70s. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, it's a lot of these dudes that was that. But if you want to talk about who was dominating the R&B and the pop charts as doing R&B music, you gotta give it to Stevie. But all these guys were still doing their thing in their 70s. Don't mean that they come in and talk about we kings. No, you're not gonna do that. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sorry I went back to the 70s, y'all. I'm so sorry because I'm doing this off the top. So I'm just trying to show y'all, you know what I'm saying? I just started thinking about artists. I was like, oh my God, how can I forget about Eddie Kendricks? I'm bugging. But the 80s. Now, like I said, Luther, I felt like was it, according to the criteria that I talked about in the beginning. But now in 85, you got new people coming in. You got a new sound coming in thanks to Teddy Riley. So now in 87, you got Keith Sweat, who came out with Make It Last Forever at the end of 1987. Oh my God, it just changes everything. The sound changes because now this sound is becoming mainstream now. You know what I mean? So it's like you got freaking Prince and them is doing what they doing, and you got you got Michael that's chasing that pop thing that he was doing with Bad, but it's like, yo, a new sound coming in. So thank God for Keith Sweat, who I feel is the originator that should get more respect for it. But then in 88, you had Bobby Brown that came out with Don't Be Cruel. Now, between 88 and 91, Bobby was bigger than Prince. Bobby was bigger than Michael Jackson. Yes, he was. Absolutely he was. He was bigger than both of them. But it was strictly R&B music. It was a whole new sound. New Jack Swing was just it. You know what I'm saying? But that did not make them kings. But I'm not giving Bobby Brown the whole decade of 1980 as the king of R&B. I can't do that. Especially you was with New Edition in 83. You got kicked out by 85. You brought out your album in King of Stage in 86. It went nowhere. So how am I going to say you was the king of R&B for the 80s? No. But between 80, 88, and 91, Bobby was that guy. He was that guy. You just got to give it to where it is. But if you want to say the whole decade, it had to be Luther. But still, you had Stevie Wonder still doing his thing because, like my brother Sin said, at the end of the day, his classic period was in the 70s, but his big commercial money-making period, as far as he started doing Sesame Street and doing shows and all that, it was his commercial period. But it was like, once a whole, you know, we talking about strictly R&B music. It wasn't doing songs with what's Stevie was doing songs with didn't he do a song with what's the dude in my Paul McCartney? Them two did a song with each other. It was like that ain't R&B, like, for real. But Luther kept it consistent, and that's why I gave him the 80s. But again, like I said, you had Freddie Jackson, you had all these that was, doing a thing in the 80s, but it was like, they didn't come in, I'm the king. Bobby didn't come in like, I'm the king. Keith didn't come in like, I'm the king. You know what I'm saying? Teddy Riley didn't come in as a producer like, I'm the new king when it comes to producing. No, you don't do that because you remain humble. Because you don't know today or tomorrow if you can get another hit. Music changes daily. You know what I'm saying? So you got to be humble. And they were humble with it. You know what I'm saying? So now we're going into the 90s. Now the 90s, going into it, like I said, you had... Bobby was like it. He was the it guy going into the 90s. You couldn't talk about nobody when they talked about R&B solo male. It was him. But then also now we getting our balladeers back in. Mind you, Luther still doing his thing. You know what I'm saying? But now you got Tevin Campbell coming in. You got Brian McKnight coming in. You got this guy R. Kelly with his group Public Announcement coming in. You got all these people coming in. But Bobby was still it coming into the 90s. But of course, by 92, hip hop soul comes in, thanks to Mary J. Blige. And what her and Uptown did to really change the sound of R&B forever. You know what I'm saying? So now it's like, you got all these artists that's coming in. Now in the 90s, it was more focused on groups, male groups and female groups, and that's what really, really was. Because, y'all, we had so many groups in the 90s. When it comes to male and female, it's ridiculous, because that was the focus of the 90s. But when you had the males, like I said, in the 90s, it was like Tevin Campbell came in 90. From 90 to 94, that dude he was it. It was hard for a lot of people to get through. Ask Usher. It took him a minute to get through, because he came out in 93 with Call Me a Mac, and he came out with his album in 94, and he still couldn't get through. Tevin Campbell was that guy. From 90 to 94, it was him. But R. Kelly goes solo in 93. By then, it was like Bobby married Whitney, and even though I love the Bobby album, it didn't do really too much. It sold 2 million, which would be great in this era. But then him coming off of 7 million to this, it wasn't cool. You know what I'm saying? Also, I forgot, you also had Aaron Hall that also went solo from God. So he was doing his thing. You see what I'm saying? He was coming out doing this thing. So in the 90s, you had a lot to work with. So R. Kelly goes solo, comes out at the end of 93 with 12 Play. And from 12 Play on, it was a wrap. So if you want to talk about like the criteria that I gave, who was the king of R&B in the 1990s? You got to give it to R. Kelly. When you talk about 90s R&B male, it's R. Kelly. But don't get me wrong, you had Brian McKnight. You know what I'm saying? Brian McKnight came out during that time. You know what I'm saying? You had Keith Washington. You had Peebo Bryson, who's been out since the 70s, but he came, Can You Stop the Rain? He was doing our duets with Regina Belle and Celine Dion. He was that go-to guy. So it was like these guys were coming in. Like I said, Tevin Campbell was it. But it was like when you talk about 90s and you talk about Pacific male who did it the whole genre, you got to give it to R. Kelly. You have to. You know what I'm saying? From 90 to 99, R. Kelly was it. Period. But you had people that was coming in. 95, you had D'Angelo come in. You know what I'm saying? In 96, you had Genuine coming in. In 97, Usher finally got his breakthrough and was able to come in with My Way. You had Maxwell in 96. You had all these artists that was these male artists that was coming in, but R. Kelly dominated. All of them. But don't get me wrong, like I said, these guys came in and they had their run, but when you think about the complete 90s, you think about R. Kelly. Period. Like Genuine, from 96 to 2001, 91, he was it. He had his thing. Freaking D'Angelo from 95, actually until 96, because everybody, as much as I love the Brown Sugar album, that was a sleeper. People didn't catch on to it until like 96, when then people started to catch on. I was like, oh, because if you look at the American Music Awards in 97, he finally won for his album Brown Sugar. So it was a sleeper hit. It took forever, but he finally, when it hit, it did. So I'm saying you got him, you got Maxwell, you got John B that's coming, you got Babyface. You know what I'm saying? You got Babyface, but Babyface want to get respected more as a writer and a producer. But don't get me wrong, he still had his hits in the 90s. You still had Luther. You still had Luther doing his thing in the 90s. But as far as impact and you know, being on the pop and R&B charts, like, and connecting to everybody, it was him. When you got me, my mom, my dad, my uncle, we all singing You Remind Me of My Jeep, Bump and Grind, but you got my grandparents singing I Believe I Can Fly. Who else was doing that in the 90s? Nobody. Don't get me wrong, we was rocking the Luther, but Luther wasn't really, it was for the adults. R. Kelly had something for the kids. Sorry I said that. Had something for them and had something for the adults. For the older ones. When you got my grandma singing I Believe I Can Fly, but we sing You Remind Me of My Jeep, Bump and Grind, Summer Bunnies, you know what I'm saying? That. And that's why in the 90s, when it comes to the king of the 90s, you got to give it to R. Kelly. Period. There's no thing with that. But again, you had the other kings that came in. You had the D'Angelo, the Maxwell, the Genuine, the Usher, you know what I'm saying, Gerald Levert. You had John B. You had, you know, Joe. Joe finally got his breakthrough in 97 because he came out in 93. But he finally had his breakthrough in 97. Like Case. Case came in 95. So you had a lot of people that had their runs. But as far as the 90s, you got to give it to all to R. Kelly. So now you got all these people coming out of 90 going into the 2000s now. Like I said, I done named, then you got Cisco going solo. So now we're starting in the 2000s. So now you got R. Kelly who's reigning, whatever. So now you got the 2000s. Now if you ask me who was the king of R&B in the 2000s, you got to give it to Usher. Period, point blank. Confessions takes over everybody. Like that era, these kids will never understand. They will never understand the thing that Usher did, and it was a complete R&B album. But it crossed over. The promotion was right. Everything. Don't get me wrong, we was hoodwinked because it wasn't really a story. But at the end of the day, it was good music. And my mom liked it. My grandma liked it. I liked it. Usher had the old, the young, black, the white with Confessions. Now, don't get me wrong. R. Kelly was still reigning for what he did. You know what I'm saying? Because in the 2000s, what did R. Kelly have? He had TP2. Then, you know, he went through his drama. You know what I'm saying? Then he came back with, you know, Chocolate Factory. Then he came back with Happy People and You Saved Me. Then he came with, you know, the TP3 with the Trap in the Closet. So he was doing his thing, but he didn't have a diamond like freaking Usher. You know what I'm saying? But also you had Joe in there. You had, you know what I'm saying, who else in the 2000s? Music started to change once again. But in the 2000s, it's like Usher with 8701. He had Confessions and he had Here I Stand. All that put together, R&B wise, chart wise, impact, nobody can fool with that. So in the king of R&B in the 2000s, I gotta give it to Usher. But I'm still not taking away what, you know what I'm saying, Cisco, Unleash the Dragon. When he did that with the Thong Song and Incomplete, he came in with the crazy. You still had Genuine. You know what I'm saying? You still had, again, in the 2000s, you had D'Angelo coming with Voodoo, which is an artistic excellence album. You had, who else? Who else in the 2000s? You still had Gerald Levert doing his thing. You still had Luther. It was like these people were still doing their thing, but the generation has changed. but they were still doing their thing. But you didn't have Usher say, I'm the king of this, I'm the king of that. Like, no, his music spoke for that. You know what I'm saying? So then now we're in the 2000s. When now, 2005, after Usher has his blockbuster with Confessions, you got these new kids coming in now. You got Chris Brown. You got Trey Songz. You got Neo, who all came out on this in the same year. You know what I'm saying? So now there's a new generation of guys. So anytime they interview Chris will be like, I was inspired by Usher and Michael Jackson. Those are my inspirations. Those are my inspirations. Genuine. You know what I'm saying? Then you come with Neo. Neo's like, I was inspired by, James Brown and Michael Jackson and who else did he used to say? He said Usher as well. You know what I'm saying? And then you had Trey Songz who said, I was inspired by R. Kelly. R. Kelly inspired me. It was like these guys didn't come in like, okay, you could come in with that confidence, but don't disrespect the OGs. That's what you don't do. And they didn't do that. And they let their music speak. They were still doing their thing because by the time Usher came with Confessions and he kind of went away and he ended up getting married and all that happened, he came with Here I Stand. But by that time, you had Chris Brown who was up here. But then you also had John Legend who came in 2004 with the Get Lifted. You see what I'm saying? It was so many people that was coming in. It was like, but they will never have a Confessions though. But, you know what I'm saying? It's sell-wise and impact-wise, but they still was selling. You know what I'm saying? John Legend won the Grammys for Get Lifted, which is an amazing R&B debut. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, you had Chris Brown, you had Trey, you had Neo. Neo's run was crazy. From 2005 to 2008, his run was crazy. You know what I'm saying? Trey didn't really start getting his respect until Chris Brown went down. And that's just the truth. Because when he came out with Got to Make It, that compared to what Chris Brown did with his first debut and what Neo was doing, Trey was down here. So then the second album, he came with Trey Day. He started with Wonder Woman. We started paying attention. But he really started getting his love when he did Can't Help But Wait. And everybody was like, okay, all right. Because my mother was like, oh, I like that song. And I was like, yeah, that's Trey Songz. Like, I've been rocking with him since I Gotta Make It. You know what I'm saying? But everybody knew Chris. You know what I'm saying? He was doing, and then when he brought out with Exclusive in 2007, it was like, uh-oh. It was like, uh-oh, this dude, he's out of here. You know what I mean? But I'm not giving him the whole decade of 2000. I'm not giving Trey the whole decade. I'm not giving Neo. Yeah, they came out in 2005, but they couldn't even still touch what R. Kelly was doing. So no, I can't give them that. But now we're in the 2010s. Now, who is popping from 2010 to 2018? Who is the R&B guy who can do R&B, who can also do pop, but still maintain and be consistent by doing R&B music? It has to be Chris Brown. Now, don't get me wrong. I give it to Trey because one thing about Trey is the fact that he really didn't have a big crossover like Chris Brown. He started getting a little bit respect when he came out with Ready. And he came out with Say I. And you know what I'm saying? Not Neighbors Are My Name. I Invented Sex. Even though these are R&B records, but he was getting more exposure because Chris Brown was on the outs. You know what I'm saying? And then Neo had already did, Year of the Gentleman. It was like, now it's Trey's time. You know what I'm saying? So now we're in the 2000s. 2010s, and I gotta give it to Chris. Because now this generation now looks at Chris like I was inspired by Chris Brown. A lot of them is not saying I was inspired by Trey Songz. A lot of them are not, but they giving him that respect. They know some of his songs, but they like, I want to be like Chris. You know what I'm saying? I want to be like Chris. Like when Jacquees, when I saw he redid Yo, which was but he redid that like Chris is it. Like, you can't knock what it is. You know what I'm saying? And that's why you look at charts, you look at all that, like I said, with my criteria in the beginning, you got to give it to Chris Brown. You have to. But that doesn't make Trey Songz not be hot, Neo, because these guys are still getting hits, but it's not like Chris. You know what I'm saying? He's representing R&B music. You know what I'm saying? If you want to talk about R&B, you're going to go to Chris. And that's just what it is. You know what I'm saying? So I went through that just to show y'all that it was different people coming into different eras, but they didn't come in like Jacquees saying, I'm the king of R&B. You don't do that. And I felt like Jacquees was very disrespectful on how he confronted Keith Sweat, and it wasn't right. And the people with this list, like, it's bothering me when you can sit up there and people is like, R. Kelly is the king of R&B and that's what it is and it's nobody else. How dare you? Like, as much as I give respect to R. Kelly, he ain't the king, because who came before him? When he was doing interviews, he was like, I was inspired by Sam Cooke, and I was inspired by Jackie Wilson and Luther Vandross and the Quiet as It Kept, Aaron Hall, and I was, Charlie Wilson. He was inspired by them. So how are y'all going to give him the king? You need to go back and do your history. It wasn't like Luther was coming in the 80s, was like, oh, well, I'm going to be the new king of this. When they asked him who you inspired by, Sam Cooke. I'm inspired by Otis Redding. I'm inspired by, he was inspired by a lot of the females. Aretha and Gladys and Dionne Warwick and Patti LaBelle. But he didn't come in wrong. You see what I'm saying? In the 2000s, you know what I'm saying? Once Usher became that dude, you didn't see Chris Brown and Neo and all them saying, oh, we gonna be the new king. We taking this over. No. They let their music speak for itself, and I feel like that's what Jacquees should do, and I think he crossed the line with that, and I think now I'm so happy that, Keith Sweat took the high road, and I feel like Chris Brown, who is kind of like the guy that these kids now are looking up to, need to pull some of these dudes to the side and say, listen, y'all need to understand, it's great to have confidence, but don't disrespect the legends. And when you do that, that ain't cool. Have the most confidence in the world. That's great. Do your thing. You supposed to come in with confidence. You supposed to say, I'm the baddest. But when you start saying, I'm the king, and you ain't got no hits, and you ain't got no impact, and you saying you the king of what generation? That's why I want to understand, Jacquees. King of what generation? Like, I don't hear this generation on social media talking about you at all. They talking about Chris. They talking about Trey. They talking about the Migos. They talking about Kodak Black. They talking about all these other people. I never seen a Jacquees. You started getting buzzed when the whole thing with LMA went down. That's when everybody started going crazy, because it was like, yo, his tripping joint is better than hers. But DJ Mustard cut that short. So that's when you started getting noticed. So when you start saying that you're the best, you are the king of this generation, you need to check yourself. And for me, that's why I did this long video, y'all. I know it's long, but I just had to get a lot off my chest, because I just did not like a lot of lists that I was seeing, because you can be the new and you can be the hot new person, but respect the ones that came before you. Don't confront them like, no, I'm the best. No. Because people like Sam Cooke and Ray Charles and Otis Redding and Barry White and Isaac Hayes and all of them had to go through hoops and deal with a lot of racism, deal with a lot of foolery for you to be where you at today. So respect the legends. And Jacquees, please stop with the madness. Go read a book and learn your history before you start saying you're the king of R&B in this generation. And another thing, when you want to call yourself a king, please know how to sing. You know what I'm saying? So enough of that. I think I've said enough. I'm going to go out to who I felt is kind of like the king of this last generation. And you got to respect for what it is. I'm going to go out with this dude right here. And what song am I going to go out with on this? Hey, I'm going to go out with a song that came out in 2011 that everybody was rocking to. And here we go. No, not that one. No, not that one. What was the song? I'm sorry, y'all. Y'all like, what y'all? You bugging? Oh yeah, this one right here. Chucking up the deuces. Whoa, 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 whoa. Ah! And on that note, I'm out, y'all. But I'm loving the way R&B is right now. Keep talking about it. I'm out, y'all. Peace.